Radio 14 KMHL. It is a few minutes after 2 o'clock and time for our Marshall City Update program. We bring in Marshall City Administrator Ben Martig. Ben, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aaron.
Great to have you in once again on your final show here. So we'll have a number of things to talk about. We'll probably look back over some of your better memories here, Marshall, as we get towards the end of it. But still a number of things to talk about from the City Council meeting last night, including, I think, some big news on what's on a tax abatement bond proposal that was, I guess, passed last night by the council to kind of finish up some things out at the Southwest Amateur Sports Center.
That's right, Aaron. We did move ahead with the tax abatement bonds last evening, along with a couple other ones, but the primary purposes of those bonds were basically for a few different things. One was we have a couple $1 million coming in from the sales tax dollars that are using to build out the ballpark project over in the relocated area just south of the high school area. And of course, we've been working on this for a number of years. It was kind of included with our sales taxes that are combined with the Merit Center and the Red Baron Arena and Expo that we're building. But we are decommissioning or kind of shutting down the old ball fields over on Channel Parkway, which the building conditions are poor over there. The fencing needs some major improvements to it. The lighting substandard. Part of the lighting issues are we can't get very high because of the airport location. So part of that is we'll be shutting that down, selling that property. Any proceeds in the future then is intended probably to go back to help repay some of these bonds when we do that. So this year will probably be a transition year for those ball fields, hoping to be able to start those in the spring of next year. But the construction continues on that. So a number of years ago, the council, we knew that with some cost overruns that we were seeing on the sports center projects that we had from kind of early estimates, we knew we were going to have to supplement some of the ball field finishing work with some general obligation tax bonds with that, and ultimately that's what was initiated last night. So, the general fund's been supporting ballpark improvements and pays for those, like Legion Field. And the existing ball fields are certainly supported by tax levy. So the new ball fields really is kind of be supported both in operations and in some capital. Is going to be a supplement of both of those together. Council's had discussions of those over the past year and knew that was kind of the direction that we were going. We always knew from the beginning that the operations would certainly be combined together, and knew long term that we would have some capital expenses. So it's really no surprise, really something we've had conversations about for quite a while with that. And I think as the sales tax dollars grow on that, there could be some potential supplement from those revenues, maybe to help offset some of those bonding costs. But the future council will be evaluating that and kind of determining that as they go. But ultimately, the taxpayers will be pledging that. So a large portion of the dollars out of this bond are going towards that project. And then the remaining amount really is going to a series of a couple of different trail improvement projects, one of those being reconstructing a couple of trails that the council's planned for just south of Avera. There's a connection in that area where we have a bike trail, and then there's also near Holy Redeemer, there's a school, there's a reconstruction of a trail that's planned. So that is part of the financing with that. So in total, the ball field portion of that's about $2.7 million of that, and then the remaining amount relates to that reconstructions that I talked about. And then the final pieces are local matches that we have on the Camden Regional Trail Project. We got a number of legacy grants, both to construct some new trails as well as to put up some signage, and those final pieces hopefully will be getting completed this year. We do have some remaining dollars that are being applied for through the state of Minnesota, or through the federal government, through the DNR, to kind of complete the golf course section of the trail. But you're looking at about $70,000 in local funds, leveraging about $430,000 to complete those Camden Regional Trail projects. So again, the total amount of dollars that will be available for the projects about $2.9 million. Leveraged with some of those other sources of funds that I talked about.
All right, very well. But that's just really one of what were a number of bonding projects talked about during the meeting last night.
That's right, Aaron. Just one thing on the tax abatement bonds. We did have some discussion. There were some questions about what does that mean about tax abatement. Sure. Ultimately, the consultant that we had came in, basically explained that abatement's probably not the good, Webster's dictionary definition of what it is, but state statutes basically call it that. And these are typical bonds that are used to build out park improvement projects. They also are used for other things like economic development project, community centers, civic centers. So, although we don't do these types of bonds on a regular basis, like we do reconstruction bonds of streets, they're not unusual under the state of Minnesota. But we did do some of our usual ones, I guess, last evening, which was about $3.6 million in general obligation bonds to build some new street projects within the city. And there are all those underway. A couple of street ones that we're currently working on includes the sediment ponds that we're dredging out at the Independence Pond, and a number of other ones. So we certainly had some of those. And then we also did a refinancing of an old bond that we had. So basically, kind of like you might be able to refinance your home with a lower interest rate, we were able to have a call date on our bonds and refund or refinance some of an older bond that we had that was a utility bond. And we're going to save about $450,000 over the remaining life of the bond repayments. So that was certainly a positive thing, I guess, from the meeting as well. But certainly this is just the first step of the process, so there'll be more to come. But we are moving ahead with those. The reconstruction bonds do also include packaged in with it some capital equipment bonding. So we are also purchasing a couple of major pieces of fire truck. One's a refurbish that we've been in the process of doing. One's a tanker truck, a large piece of street improvement project, and then some minor equipment improvements out at the fire station, replacing some of the doors that we have. So it is. Those are the other pieces, I guess, of the GO bonds that the council initiated last evening.
All right, very well. One other thing we talked about that people might want to really kind of note is that there's a grant, or that the city's actually working on getting a grant for a new phase on one of the new industrial parks.
That's right, Aaron. I think we might have talked about it in the past. We were applying for a grant similar to what we did on the Sonstegard Industrial Park, where we've seen a series of businesses develop, Relco, Action, Track Chair, beverage wholesalers, and Runnings expansions all kind of followed some of the infrastructure improvements that we did that included the same pool of grant funds that we used to help pay for the infrastructure development, along with local matching funds. Of course, nothing's free in the world. But we are applying for basically half of the improvements to extend to the new industrial park, what we call the Commerce Industrial Park. So if you're at Lake Road intersection of the current industrial park, you continue down heading north on 68. There's another township road there. That's where we've got a grant that's paying for a realignment of the road connection. It was a township road. The city's taking on ownership. There's a very large piece of farmland, basically, that the city had purchased quite a number of years ago. And we're now starting the preliminary phases of looking to build that out. We have had some interest in the property, and our Economic Development Authority continues to work on that. But you're looking at investment in the property that, again, would pay for this grant. The council approved the application to go in, so it does obligate them to some degree that if we get awarded, that there's a serious commitment to move ahead with the project. And it would basically pay for all the sewer, water, storm sewer systems, and some ponding out there. We would not be building any real street surfacing at this point. With the new intersection connection there, you could actually, with those improvements, you'd have a shovel-ready site in effect for the development, and could add the other roadways later. That just builds out a very small piece of this overall very large project. So the city is definitely going into this cautiously and not diving in and building out a whole bunch of infrastructure. So there certainly is a cost to that would be locally assessed back to the properties and hopefully recouped in future land sales. But the council did approve moving ahead with that last evening.
And the other thing that I guess that we had kind of highlighted to talk about here was just the naming, and I don't know if it's a dedication of the underpass that goes under Highway 23 between the Marshall High School and Southwest Minnesota State University. That's
right, Aaron. Many of the listeners probably are very familiar with the late Steve Strouts. He was very active in the community. One of the things that he was passionate about was he served as the chairman of the Marshall Area Chamber Transportation Group, which advocated for 4-lane highway access of Highway 23, the interregional corridor being upgraded to a 4-lane to help serve Southwest Minnesota that's currently underserved, as well as locally trying to prioritize safety improvements in the community as it continued to grow across Highway 23, which was once a bypass and really is kind of past that point in time. So one of those projects, locally and safety improvement projects, a number of them that we've seen, including some improvements over at County Road 7, the Saratoga Street intersection project, and then the other one, which relates to the naming of Steve Strout's Way, is the underpass that connects really the high school area, the developing commercial area with the sports center, and Southwest Minnesota State University. And so his family was there. Sue was there last evening. His wife and was at the council meeting to accept the naming of the resolution, and there's going to be some ceremonies in conjunction with the SMSU Glow Run this Friday coming up. So I think at about check the media exactly on the times, but I think it's somewhere around a little after 7 o'clock at night on the SMSU side. There'll be a dedication ceremonies. There's also a run that occurs, and then they're going to have some informational pieces over at the Swans Regional Event Center football field. They're going to have some information in relation to some other 4-lane improvements as far as those passing lanes that are going in, and maybe some other things related to Highway 23. So I think a number of us were moved by Mr. Strout's, and certainly appropriate that he named for that safety improvement. And I think it's definitely been tremendously utilized. You see high school students going back and forth on a regular basis through there. And I think as the community continues to grow, it's going to be used even more to be able to have kind of a safe pedestrian way to get through without having to go at grade across Highway 23. So certainly look forward to that event.
Yeah, no question about that. And, you talk about Steve, I guess, and just a tireless worker for transportation in this region.
That's right, Aaron. We'll probably have to put a little Hawkeye symbol or something over there, because I think we all remember him as a big Hawkeye fan as well. So we certainly miss him, and the council recognized that last night. All
right, very well. Of course, this being your last show and your last week here, Marshall, we wanted to give you some time to kind of look back over your time here. I mean, certainly, I'm sure you have some pretty good memories of your time here at Marshall.
That's right, Aaron. I mean, I just want to say thank you to the residents of the city of Marshall for allowing me to serve them over since 2008 when I came in. It's really been a whirlwind. I guess I'd kind of say that one of the things that was emphasized when I came here was talking about partnerships and the value of the city of Marshall and their partners within the community, how important partnerships were, making the best of limited resources to try and improve the community. And I think those are the types of projects that probably stick in my mind since that time. So reorganization of our economic development activities, certainly seeing the fruits of some of those things, and certainly the people involved in that are what really make it work. Coming in with the library project where it had kind of stalled out, and we were able to come together working with the county, the library board, and the city to get that project up and going, which ultimately led to a second phase in the children's wing construction. I just saw the library chair, Bill Cole, this morning at the gas station, and they're still working on some maintenance improvements to the HVAC system still from the original building. So, but that's been a tremendous, I think, asset to the community. Just a lot of capital projects. The Camden Regional Trail, I think we haven't really seen the fruits of that come forward yet, but that was a major partnership with the Lyon County and the city of Marshall and the city of Lind. And I think you're going to see that as a real asset both to the community and attracting people in, and certainly the Merit Center and Sports Center projects. So I guess capital projects, but ultimately the kind of the partnerships behind that to me is kind of what I'll look back and have fond memories of, and certainly the groundwork and expectations were laid for me when I came here, that's the way we do things here.
I remember a couple of years ago when we were talking about the Camden Regional project, and you said, it's amazing that we were able to get everybody together to pull that thing off. I mean, that was a pretty special deal when we look back on it.
Yeah, and trail projects are challenging no matter what, as far as you deal with landowner issues and things. We were able to get in some rights of ways, but the financing was complicated. The fact that there was some willingness to go into the state park system, and the county and the city kind of used their own forces to help build some of those trail sections really wasn't something you'd ever seen done in the state. And we weren't necessarily looking for examples of how they did it somewhere else. We just kind of rolled up our sleeves and said, we want to see this get done. We think we all benefit. How do we get it done? And put pencil to paper and started digging, I guess. So that worked out. And so certainly that was something I'll look back as a very positive thing. And I expect that I'll bring my bike back at some point and ride the trail when it's fully completed.
And then probably, I would think that, with the latest project, of course, the big one, the Southwest Amateur Sports Center, which is nearly completed, and a lot of the work has gone in there. I mean, that obviously has to be one of the bright spots too.
That's right, Aaron. It was a challenging project. I think the end product everybody will appreciate. There was a lot. My hair has gotten a lot grayer, and I've lost a lot of hair since I've been here on that project. Extremely complicated financing project. We had to get legislative approvals over several legislative sessions. We had to local vote on the issue. The construction project, when you have like 3 different projects in effect, the ball fields, the arena, and the Merit Center kind of all merged a little bit together with a little bit of different funding sources and some private sponsorships, just really complicated. And there's still a lot of details that are going to get worked out here when I'm not around, both on the operations, but ultimately I think it's going to be truly, it's not just an ice arena. You're going to see that this is a civic center for the community that is really beautiful and second to none for a community this size. And I guess one of the things, too, that I think was a cornerstone of that project was looking at it as an economic development project. It's quality of life, community betterment issue here, but it will attract people to come play youth sports and activities that hopefully those people have positive experiences in Marshall, can open the door maybe for them to go to the university for school, because workforce is such a critical issue for communities, and particularly rural communities. If you're going to be a strong economy and grow, you need to invest in families. So you need to have quality of life improvements and things that will not only serve your current residents, but what the future, what other people are looking for in places to go work, as well as keeping a close tab on the younger generation and what they want and need, because ultimately we're in a world where the workforce is getting tighter and tighter, and that demand for workforce is going to be one of the most important economic development issues. So I guess that's one thing I would say is, with that project tied in, is I think there's a lot of other value that will come out of that, and is in a long history of following a long history of Marshall's kind of attunement to that issue with things that they had done before I was here, such as the YMCA, that some of the downtown improvement projects, investments in the high school and the Performing Arts Center, et cetera, a long list of things. I think that's what's made this community strong, is the investments that they've made back in themselves for the future generations.
And I think, when you look at that, and when you look at what this project was, it was, and it still is very much about economic development and trying to bring, people into Marshall, which has been a major theme of this community ever since I've been in town. I know it has been since you've been around.
That's right, Aaron. And I know certainly I think it's going to strengthen the existing businesses. So hopefully it opens up more business opportunities for growth of sales for our existing businesses. Certainly there's an expectation and a hope that we'll see more development to come into the future, but and they're continuing to work on that. Mr. Brink talked about that. Our economic development director is continuing to meet with potential people interested in a number of different developments related to kind of hotels and some other things. But the other thing is, it doesn't happen overnight, and you got to continue to sell the community. And I think the table is set, I think, for that property, and you're going to see some fruits on that coming forward. Certainly, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the Convention and Visitors Bureau. It's got a lot of great ideas about maybe events and things to bring people in. So we hope all those things kind of start to come into place in the coming years ahead as that facility comes available.
Well, Ben, on a personal note, I've appreciated your willingness to work with us. I mean, your willingness to get us information in a timely fashion and come and do these shows every couple of weeks. I know you've been a busy man here, but we appreciate that, because it allows us to keep the listeners informed on what's going on in Marshall. And I just wanted to say a personal thank you to you. So,
all right, thank you. Likewise to you, Aaron, as well. It's been a pleasure, and I wish nothing but the best for you and for the listeners out there in the future.
All right. Thank you very much. For the final time here on the radio anyway, that's Marshall City Administrator Ben Martig here on our Marshall Radio Update program on Radio 14 KMHL. 14 KMHL. 14 KMHL.